Hey everyone, ready to explore the world of prototyping?
Prototyping, absolutely. It's a pretty fascinating journey, from those very first clay models.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. To the incredible simulations we're seeing today.
It's come a long way. Centuries, really. I mean, think about it. Even those early clay models.
Right, for pottery and stuff.
Exactly. Or wooden prototypes for machines. It's always been about testing, visualizing those ideas
Before you actually go for it.
right before you fully commit. And of course, as technology's evolved, well,
Prototyping has had to keep up.
oh, absolutely. The rise of software like CAD, simulation tools, it's really changed the game.
Okay, so let's get down to basics. What do we actually mean by prototyping these days?
Yeah, it's definitely more than just, building a physical model.
It feels much broader now.
It is. It's about bringing those ideas to life, but in a way that you can test them.
And really learn from
Learn
them.
and communicate those ideas effectively. And that can take so many forms, physical, virtual.
Or even a mix, right?
Exactly. So it's not just about what you're prototyping.
But why you're doing it.
Exactly. What are you hoping to achieve? Are you testing how something works? Or maybe the user experience of a website?
Or even like how you communicate a complex design to someone who's not an engineer.
Absolutely. Your goals determine the type of prototype you'll choose.
Makes sense. Okay, so let's break down these different types. We've got physical,
You've got virtual,
and then there's that whole mixed reality
the
thing.
exciting new frontier.
So where do we start?
Let's start with the familiar. Physical prototypes. Those are the tangible ones.
You can actually hold them.
Exactly. Think 3D printed parts, cardboard models, or even a fully functional prototype.
So you can actually feel how it works, right? In the real world.
Yeah, test its strength, ergonomics, how it interacts with its environment.
That tangible feedback has got to be valuable.
Oh, it's invaluable. But there are limitations too. They can be time consuming to make, not to mention expensive.
And you might need to make a ton of them.
Especially if you're making changes and testing different versions.
And sometimes you just can't be that flexible with a physical model.
Right. And that's where virtual prototypes become super handy.
They seem a lot more flexible.
They are. They're digital representations, like your CAD models, simulations.
Or even just those detailed renderings.
Exactly. And that digital world, it offers a level of flexibility that physical prototypes just can't match.
You can try out all sorts of ideas quickly.
And test out different situations.
Yeah, and even simulate how a product might behave under all sorts of conditions.
Precisely. And sharing them, collaborating, especially if you're working remotely, so much easier. But of course, there's downsides.
I bet. It can't really be the same as holding the real thing.
It's true. They lack that tangibility. Things like texture, weight, how a product feels in your hand, that's tough to replicate digitally.
And those simulations, they're powerful, but they are based on, well, that may not always line up perfectly with the real world.
Exactly. So it's a trade-off. Physical gives you tangibility, but less flexibility, while virtual is flexible, but not as real.
Which brings us to that mixed reality stuff. It's trying to bridge that gap, right?
Yes. Mixed reality prototypes are all about merging the physical and the digital.
Give me an example, because this is where I start to lose it.
Sure. Imagine you've got a model of a new smartphone. Physical model. But then, using mixed reality, you overlay different interface designs onto it.
Wait, so I'm holding the physical phone?
Yeah. But you're interacting with virtual screens and buttons.
As if they were actually there.
Exactly. So you can test button placement, menus, even get a feel for how the phone would sit in your hand with those virtual elements.
That's crazy. You get the best of both worlds.
Precisely. And that's just the beginning. We're seeing it used in architecture, where you can walk through a virtual building.
Wow.
That's superimposed on the actual construction site. And in manufacturing, technicians can use it to see assembly instructions or even diagnose problems with machines.
It's not just design then.
Not at all. It's enhancing all sorts of processes and experiences. But I'm sure you can imagine there are some pretty hefty challenges.
I can only imagine. What are we talking about?
Well, for one, you need serious hardware and software to handle this.
To process all that, yeah.
Real-time processing and rendering those complex 3D models and getting the virtual and physical elements to line up perfectly.
That's got to be tough.
That's crucial for a seamless experience. Plus, designing those interfaces, making them intuitive,
So you can actually interact naturally in that mixed reality space,
Right. That's a huge challenge, not to mention the data management issues.
especially with those super detailed models.
Exactly. So it's early days, but the potential is immense.
It's exciting to think about where it could go.
Absolutely. But before we get too futuristic,
We should probably ground ourselves with some real-world examples.
yes, let's talk about some of those fascinating cases from the research. What really stood out to you?
One that really caught my eye was the use of both virtual models and physical samples in architectural renovations.
Oh, that's a good one. Imagine being able to not just see changes to a historic building, but also touch those materials.
It's like you're bringing the blueprint to life,
Mhm.
especially important with something like a historical landmark.
Absolutely. And the communication aspect, it's huge. Architects, preservationists, stakeholders, everyone's on the same page.
And the final product
Sure.
respects the history, but also works for today.
Exactly.
Hmm.
What else caught your attention?
There was this study about developing a 3D whiteboard product.
I remember that one.
They started with just a very basic idea
Very relaxed requirements.
and used prototyping every step of the way to refine their design.
Constantly testing and learning.
They weren't afraid to experiment.
Not at all. They used both physical and virtual prototypes, testing functionality, how it felt to use, the whole user experience,
It was very iterative.
and user-centered, which is so important in design these days.
You really hit on that user focus. It shows how prototyping isn't just a one-time thing,
It's an ongoing process of learning and refinement.
constantly making it better.
Yeah.
So what else did you find interesting?
Well, there was this example of designing a 4-bar linkage.
Oh,
It's a mechanical system used in lots of machines.
okay. Got it.
And they used both physical and virtual prototyping to test and improve the design.
So taking advantage of both approaches.
Exactly. The physical prototypes, they let them test how it moved and how strong it was under real-world conditions.
With the virtual ones.
Those allowed them to experiment with different designs and simulate a lot more conditions quickly.
Which would have taken forever with just physical models.
And been way more expensive. It's a
Yeah.
great example of how the two methods complement each other.
You choose the method that best suits the specific design challenge.
Yes, and it highlights a crucial point about prototyping. It's not just about building, it's about gaining knowledge.
So it's about using those prototypes, both physical and virtual, to really understand the design deeply.
To see its strengths and weaknesses and its potential.
And then turn those abstract ideas into something real and tangible.
Something you can test, learn from, and ultimately make better.
It's making me think about all the amazing possibilities, not just in design or engineering.
But in any field where you are creating something new.
Like we've seen how it can lead to better products, even more engaging learning experiences.
Even envisioning how our cities might look in the future.
It's a powerful tool for making a real impact.
Absolutely. But before we get too carried away,
There are limitations, right?
of course, as powerful as prototyping is, it's not a magic solution.
What are some things we need to be careful about?
Well, as technology keeps advancing, it's going to get more complex. We talked about mixed reality,
Yeah, that needs some serious tech.
specialized hardware, software, and you need the know-how to use it all. It's not for everyone.
So it's not enough to just have the latest gadgets.
Exactly. And even with more, traditional methods, you have to choose the right type of prototype for the task.
So if it's too basic, you might not learn enough.
And if it's too complex, it's going to take forever, cost a fortune, and could even slow down the whole design process.
So it's finding that balance.
Exactly. Make it detailed enough to be useful, but not so detailed that it becomes a burden.
And I guess sometimes prototyping might not even be the best way to go.
You're right. If you have a very clear problem and not much uncertainty, maybe you don't need a prototype.
Or if you're really pressed for time and resources,
In those cases, there might be other options that work better, like analysis or simulations.
right, or even talking to experts.
Exactly. So it's a powerful tool, yes, but it's about being strategic, using it wisely based on your specific project.
Okay, so it's not always the answer, but it's a powerful tool when used correctly.
I couldn't agree more. It's about making smart choices to maximize the benefits of prototyping.
This has been so insightful. I'm really starting to get how much there is to prototyping.
Me too. It's amazing to see how it's used to tackle real-world problems in so many different fields.
And it makes me think about how we can use those principles in our own work, even in our personal lives.
Absolutely. Prototyping is not just for engineers or designers. It's a tool for anyone who wants to explore ideas, solve problems, and create something new.
So whether you are building a product, coming up with a new service, or even just trying to improve some part of your routine.
Prototyping can be a huge part of that journey.
Prototyping can be a huge part of that journey.
Yeah.
Okay, before we get too lost in all these amazing examples,
Yes.
let's go back to something you mentioned.
Yeah.
Abstract prototypes.
Right.
I gotta admit, that one threw me off a little. What exactly are they?
So an abstract prototype, it's a little different from the physical, virtual, even the mixed reality ones we've talked about.
In what way?
It's not so much about a tangible thing you can hold,
Okay.
but more about representing a system or a process in a simplified, conceptual way.
So instead of building something or creating a simulation, you might use a diagram,
You could use a diagram.
a flowchart maybe.
A flowchart, exactly. You could even do a role-playing exercise where people act out different scenarios.
Interesting. Okay, I think I get it. But why would you choose to make an abstract prototype instead of something more, well, concrete?
There are a few reasons, actually. First, it can be a really efficient way to explore an idea early on. You know, when things are still fuzzy.
When you're not even sure what the final product's going to look like.
Right. It helps you understand that core process or system without getting bogged down in all the tiny details.
So you can focus on the big picture first,
Exactly. Find potential problems or opportunities.
before you spend all that time and money building something more detailed.
Precisely.
That's smart. It's like planning your route before you hit the road.
Exactly. And another advantage is communication and collaboration.
Because it's more simplified.
Yes. It's easier for people to grasp those core ideas, even if they aren't experts.
So you can get everyone on the same page.
Exactly.
Mm.
And make sure there's a shared understanding.
Abstract prototypes, they seem really useful, especially in those early stages.
They are. It's like sketching out your idea before you start filling in the details.
I like that analogy.
And don't think they're only for the early stages. They can be helpful throughout the design process
Right.
to explore different scenarios, test assumptions, or even explain complex technical stuff in a way that's easier to understand.
So they're like a multi-tool, always good to have.
That's a great way to put it. It all comes back to choosing the right tool for the job. And sometimes the most effective tool is one that lets you step back and think more abstractly.
That makes sense. This whole conversation has been so eye-opening.
It really shows you how diverse the world of prototyping is.
From building models to exploring abstract concepts.
It's really amazing what humans can come up with.
And as technology keeps advancing, I wonder what new types of prototyping we'll see.
It's definitely an exciting time. But it's important to remember that prototyping isn't just about the fancy tech.
It's a way of thinking.
A way of approaching challenges and finding solutions.
It's about trying new things, iterating,
And learning as you go.
and understanding that failure isn't the end.
It's a step towards innovation.
So whether you're an engineer, a designer, or just someone with a cool idea,
Don't be afraid to experiment.
build those prototypes and bring your vision to life.
The possibilities are truly endless.
I love that. So as we wrap up this incredible exploration of prototyping,
Yes.
I want to leave you with this thought.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to experiment. Be curious and try new things. Embrace the power of prototyping and let your imagination soar.
It's been a pleasure discussing this with you.
Who knows, maybe you'll discover the next big thing,
That's the beauty of it, right? You're taking that leap, turning a thought into something real.
something you can see and touch.
Exactly. And test it out, learn from it. And it's not just about the final product.
It's about how you get there, right?
The whole journey, all those discoveries, the aha moments.
Those are the best.
That's what makes it so rewarding, watching your idea come to life, getting better and better each time, and finally it's something that solves a problem, you know?
Or fills a need.
Or maybe it just brings some joy to the world. It's pretty amazing.
It's turning what if into whoa, that's awesome.
Exactly. And that excitement, that feeling of creating something new, it's something anyone can experience. You don't have to be an engineer or a designer.
It's a human thing.
It really is. So as we wrap up this amazing journey into the world of prototyping,
Okay,
I want to leave you with this.
go ahead.
Don't let fear hold you back. Be curious, try new things, and experiment. Embrace the power of prototyping and let your imagination run free.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's been a pleasure exploring this with you. Thanks for joining us.